Hey guys, so thus far, in previous episodes, I showed you how I composed this song, and the general idea of this series is to get into more detail about how songs are made. I get a lot of questions on this website called Quora that I frequent and write on. I was actually, I think, a top writer in 2018, I don't know. Hoping I'll get it again this year. And it's like there's all this mystery around how people write songs or produce songs or whatever, so I wanted to get into more detail than just, oh yeah, you just create tracks and then, play them on top of each other, you know what I mean? Just to show you what compression is and all that other jazz, which is why some of this stuff is long-winded. I appreciate your patience, and I hope that you can take a lot of information from this, and it will inspire you to work on your own songs and write your own music and all that good stuff. So today, essentially everything is done. We're going to be looking at editing and mastering today. So let's open up Pro Tools. I just started working on listening to the drum track. It's been a few days. I wanted to get a good drum track, and I think we may find some mistakes in it, but essentially this is what you do, and it's what I'll do with some other parts too. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm resampling parts. So here, I thought it was my system and I restarted and everything, but it turns out that there's an audio error. So first, I want to go ahead and put a marker on that. I'm going to say drum audio error. Now, you could do this if you're not doing a recording to a click. When you do recordings to a click, it's really handy because we have this thing called grid mode, and I don't know if you guys can see it, but there are little lines here, and those correspond to beats. So you can just basically place your cursor directly on those lines, and it just lines up. So I'll show you why that's handy and why you care. So here is my bad hear that? It sounds like just electrical issues. I'm unsure why. I'm going to pull this guy up because it's hard for me to see him down there. There we go. And let's see. I want to figure out where one is. So it's this. Okay, so thankfully this part is just the snare and the ride. Two. Okay, so my cut wasn't so good. I want to cut, well, I guess maybe actually do those 1, 2, 3 bars. Whoops, not copy. I want to cut that. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to where I know I have a good take of me just doing that piece of the groove. If I wanted to, I could copy this entire thing and just paste it, but there are different drum fills in here, and I want to at least try and keep that intact. So let's find our spot. I noticed that audio error again. So now at this point, I'm going to go through and just label them. I only noticed it that one time. Now, when I listened to this on CD, I didn't notice it. And I'm willing to bet that an audience wouldn't notice it, but I'm going to notice it, so I'm fixing it. I don't see any more errors here. And the way we'll know errors is you'll notice just a complete change in the waveform. Like this is at normal, and there's my little fill, and they're very concise, but this thing is just like, you know, so let's figure this one out. So basically, I thought I had this entire front chunk good, because this was, you know, my other audio error, and now I come to find out that I'm going to have to do something about this too. So maybe I'm going to have to go back and use my back chunk, or just use pieces of this. So I'm curious, now we're working on the first audio error. Let's see where that one is. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. I have a feeling it was an issue with the mixer, or maybe I was hitting a microphone or something while I played, who knows. But as an engineer, this is the stuff you gotta fix. Okay, so what part was that? Let's start again. So I'm looking at this little counter here. It's telling me like what beat I'm on. So there I'm on bar 14, measure 1. And then I can just select up until my anomaly ends. And that's what I'm going to do. So that means that over here I'm starting on 1. And then over here I'm starting on 1. So all I need is 1 bar of a good ride cymbal and snare. So I'm going to go ahead and kapow that. Ow! Oops. Okay, so now this looks like it fits, but that's only part of the game. Let's make sure that I did this right even. Nope, I was off by a beat. Fun. Okay, so this looks like it's better. Nope, still wrong. Okay, so I wound up putting the phone down for a little bit and figuring out my mysteries. It seems like I'm anomaly free. I did have to do something a little bit crazy here. I have a feeling it's gonna be edited again, but yeah. As you can see, there's audio missing here. This was a place of another anomaly, and what sucks is it happened right during one of my fills, so I kind of just sampled my own fill. How great that's gonna sound ultimately, I don't know, but this is the beauty of dealing with Pro Tools and clicks and such, is that I can essentially change stuff whenever I need to. Anyway, I want to listen to it. It's not really that bad. So here I don't need to deal with fades, really, but I'm going to put some in anyway. Sometimes when I don't, what happens is the sound it's hard to explain, but the sound will just kind of make a little click sound right after its audio is over. So it's just a safe bet to go ahead and just fade out, even just this little bit. I mean, the selection here that I did, let's see, is, yeah, it's 0.32 seconds, but at least that will stop me from listening to the clip click. So now I'm going to wind up doing the same thing next door here. Go ahead, do a fade there. This is a crossfade option, like you can change the angle of this, the whole 9 yards. You can even preview it. In this case, we don't really need to do that. Maybe someday we will, but not right now. Okay. Here too, where you have these splices, I'm going to want to also crossfade them. Not very much, you know what, let's go ahead and zoom in. Yeah, it's definitely the microphones. This slice here is that anomaly happening on its own after the drums are done. So, I don't know, maybe that had to do with intermittent power. Maybe I was moving a microphone and its cable or something. Lord knows. But you can see the problems it created for me. So I believe in the previous episode I mentioned about how you're not supposed to be mastering your own stuff, and you're not supposed to be listening to it through the same set of equipment. And that has to do, especially if you're listening to it through really, really high-end speakers, or, you know, something that's amplified a lot more than your standard like car system or something. The volume on the tracks is going to sound completely different. And by volume on the tracks, I mean specifically like your saxophone, at least in this case. My saxophone track may sound louder on one system than another, and you have to try different systems and compensate for that. So what I like to do is I like to have a best case scenario setup and a worst case scenario setup. So in the next episode, while we're listening to things on other mediums, essentially, you're going to see what that's like. We're going to go over to my buddy's house. He's got speakers that are like as tall as I am. And I'm pretty sure he won't mind us filming there. And he and I always have a good time anyway. We go back like, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. And yeah, I always go over to his house to listen to the CDs that or the albums, I should say, that I create, because he has just some amazing stuff. And then I also like to just listen through stuff on my cell phone, you know, and that will give me an idea of what the worst case scenario mix sounds like. Generally speaking, mixing in headphones is a really good thing to do, but you don't want to only mix in headphones. Most people, when you think about it, are listening to music through headphones these days. It's not like we actually have CD sales or anything. So it's either their headphones or their car, you know. So generally speaking, I pay more attention to what my mix sounds like in a car and what my mix sounds like in headphones. And the way you want to mix with headphones, I haven't come to think of it, I haven't mixed with headphones with this, but first I mix listening to the speakers, then I mix with my headphones, then I take the headphones off, and I mix with my speakers again. So, yeah, I thought this mixing and mastering thing would be a lot longer, but it isn't, because we've already done a lot of it. And that's why, you know, I do that. I always, as I'm sure you remember from the first, or, well, I guess it was really the second episode, I was looking at volume and saying, well, this could be louder, this could be better, or whatever, and altering it so that way it was loud enough. because I did that every step of the way, now I don't have a lot of work in the mixing department. So before we go ahead and do our final mix, or at least a final mix of sorts, because eventually after these tracks are done, I wind up making a whole nother Pro Tools session and then, correct any inconsistencies, essentially. So you can do that with in your mastering process too. I have a feeling that that's going to be the issue here. Anyway, I added my fade out here. Essentially this line you can see is static here throughout, and then it goes down, right? So this is my fade out. So it's a master fade out, and that's the nice part, is you don't have to put individual fades on all these tracks and whatever. There are ways to make uniform ones, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So let's go ahead and we're going to listen to our fade. I've also changed some of my saxophone parts here to ones that I thought sounded better. But yeah, let's go ahead and listen to that fade out. Nope, a little too soon. Okay, so I'm a fan. I am going to, however, just move it over ever so much. Hold in. Okay. So that's all set. I'm going to go ahead and save that. So, something I noticed here was my saxophone, wherever that is. Where are you, saxophone? There we go. Doesn't have reverb. So we're going to do that with one of my presets. And even though you may even make your own presets, it's important to remember that different recordings may require you to tweak things. So never, even when you create your own presets, never just use the same presets. So sax reverb, that's one of my presets. So I don't know if you could tell with my cruddy phone mic, but every time you add deverb, at least in Pro Tools, it will lower the volume a little bit of the track in question. What's nice about my motif workstation is most things already have verb on them. We're going to check out this organ. Yeah, okay, so I don't have to worry about that. Generally speaking, I also put a verb track on my master, and I thought that was doing the trick for the saxophone, but it really didn't, so that's why I added my standard verb there. But you noticed again, I moved it around now. So what's soloed here? Sax lead. Alright. So I'm going to just take a listen to the overall mix really quick and just see if I like it. Okay, so I just heard, before the sax came in, I heard myself take a breath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade this in. You could also just delete that little piece of it. It's up to you. I think my keyboard actually has a little bit of output there. I want to see if that's the case. So sometimes, especially if you're using a phone's out instead of your regular mono out, or if something is powered, you'll get a little bit of a hum or something, even just from an amplifier. So generally speaking, like if there's hum here, which there may be, you could just do basically a unison fade in or a group fade in there, but let's see if there's anything there. Okay, so I heard a sound. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, so that fixed what was there. So now what I have to do is I have to go ahead and fade this. Sometimes what happens if you don't fade stuff you deleted, it will actually make a pop in the recording. And then here I'm going to show you, I guess, what we could call a group fade. And you could do this fading in or out. I'm just going to select these two tracks since they're the same and go ahead and just do a fade in. Alright, cool. So yeah, that's just listening to the first like 3 seconds of the song. I found something wrong with it. Anyway, let's listen to more of that. Okay, so I'm on the fence about if I want to just get the best melody take and just duplicate it. So you may or may not remember at the end of this, on the original track, I actually played this one part wrong. I went to the wrong note. So what I did was I took myself playing the melody from over here and I just put it over there. So that's the beauty of doing things to a click, is you can sample stuff and reuse it. I don't know if it really qualifies as sampling, but you know, I can edit things down and it just makes it a lot easier. Especially because you don't have to ask a performer to keep performing the same thing over and over again. You can take the best of. In fact, I'm going to show you what that looks like. I don't really think I'm going to go to that length with this particular song. I'm going to show you the flute part. Now, I spelled flute that way just to amuse myself. It's kind of just weird things that I do. You'll notice that this square looks exactly like that square. That's because it's exactly the same thing. And it gave me a much more consistent sound. Here it is again. Again. So when you do that, when you take your best take and just paste it, it makes it sound incredibly consistent. Which, if that's what you're going for, and that's what I was going for here, because I was looking for basically a Chuck Mangione style recording, and a lot of those recordings, even when people go off mic, you know, they'll fix it so they're on mic. It's crazy the amount of production that they do. But I don't think I'm going for that real crisp, clean sound here. I'm looking for more of a jazz-ish, well, that was jazz too, but a more laid-back, jazz-ish sound. So I don't think I'm really interested in making everything sound perfect necessarily. Okay, so just by my ear, that sounds great, but we are going to do some more meter watching. And this is essentially what you're going to want to do when you're mastering. Find this mix window. Come on. Wakey, wakey. There we go. Alright, so the main meter we're going to want to look at is this one that says Master 1. And we're going to want to just take a look at our level and see if it stays around -3. It doesn't have to be perfectly -3. Okay, so, you know, it's, I'm going to play around with it a little bit. So I'm going to go back to my compressor limiter, which you should be familiar with because we used this in a previous episode. And essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my limiter down a little bit because I just noticed that the thing went a little bit beyond -3, which isn't a horrible thing, but sometimes the MP3 vendors will be really picky about such things. Okay, wow. I guess it's because we did that work prior. We have to do less work. This is generally why I'll just kind of keep mixing as I go, as you've seen in the other videos. It just makes your life easier. But again, always put your presets in before you do any of this, because if you don't do those presets, you're going to wind up redoing it all over again. So just to give you guys an idea of how I mix, what I like to do is I like to listen to the bass and the drums first and just kind of go on from there. I like to use my bass as essentially the main volume that I have to adjust everything else to. So unless my bass is peaking or something, you can see here I have it at plus 1.7 dB. I don't know why it's panned like that though. It shouldn't be panned because it's a bass. You always want your bass, generally speaking anyway, unless you're going for some type of a, you know, if you're in a live situation and you want the bass to sound like it's to the left of the stage or something, you know, but generally speaking you want your bass just pan dead center. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear that through this little microphone, but it's something. Actually going to turn it up a little. And then if you're unsure of what the volume, you know, of where your volume is, take a look at your master. The other thing too is I still feel like we have too much treble in that. There we go. Let's see what that sounds like for the rest of the mix. There we go. Now I can feel some bass there. Okay, so theoretically, these levels aren't bad, but when you're doing mastering, there's a little bit more to it. So we went through, we did our limiter, we looked at our compression. I mean, it's hovering a little bit above -3 here and there, but it's not bad. Generally speaking, what the like iTunes and the rest are interested in is stuff not peaking. And just because a computer says something is peaking, it doesn't mean it's actually peaking. In my mind, you have to have an actual, dissonant sound, essentially, for something to peak. It can't just be the computer says it's peaking, so it's peaking. As a matter of fact, when I just was doing the bass here in Pro Tools, I don't know if you noticed it, but I clicked off a peak meter there because it's not peaking, you know. I used to be a stickler about that, and I used to think, oh, well, if the computer says it's peaking, then it must be peaking. And yeah, I kind of realized after a while that computers lie. And the thing is the computer is just the computer. It doesn't really know. It's just measuring dB level. And in this program, this application, there's programming in it that says, okay, well, if something's above this dB, that's a peak. And it may not necessarily be a true peak, which is distortion, essentially. So I went through my drum part and I edited that. So all of the editing, anyway, is essentially done at this point, unless I hear other things. I think, come to think of it, I think I heard a little bit of rattling on the sax part, so I'm going to go back and fix that. Okay, well, I got off easy on that one. I was going to ask them, like, are you really Google or whatever? It's just, I always get these calls, and I know other people do too, like, oh, we want to make sure and verify your Google listing and whatever. It's complete bullshit, because all you have to do is claim a business on Google and make your own listing. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to go back and just kind of delete some of that key clicking that was there, because it just bugged me. I don't think the average listener is going to notice that, but I do, and I have to live with these recordings for the rest of my life. I want them to sound the way I want them to sound, you know? So, yeah, we will see you in the listening episode, and you won't really, unfortunately, because I'm just going to be doing it with my cell phone, I'm not putting that much effort into the filming of this. Unfortunately, you're just going to be watching me do stuff with my cell phone. You'll hear the music through the cell phone, and, I'm going to show you what notes to take and how to essentially change these sounds. All right, so I'll see you in the next episode. Listening. Goodbye, friends.